Series 11 is a significant milestone in the history of PCA sim racing. Marking the 5th anniversary of the league, these races have grown from less than 50 drivers in Series 1 to nearly 270 drivers in Series 10. Likely, this latest series will continue to see the same sort of explosive growth. Series 11 will host 7 events, all at a different track. Each of the 5 PCA sim racing classes, Entry, Challenge, Sport, Club, and Pro, will have 40-minute races. After a poll among the Series 10 drivers, we'll see a return for full-course yellows, stronger opening lap penalties, and a mix of fixed and open setups per class. So let's kick off the celebrations as we get ready to watch the PCA Sim Racing Series 11 Club Class live here on Podium Esports. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Robert Hill Jr. Cameron Avedon is on social media, and Ryan Bauer is producing while using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Now, we have a special segment here to start things off. It's time for the Winner's Circle. We're going to be talking to each of the 3 winners that we've had so far this event here at Spa, starting off with Cameron McDonald, Derek Dirksen, and Mark Foley. Cameron, congratulations on the win. Is this your first win in a Porsche?
It is. My very first one. Got close, but this is my first win.
That's got to be a very meaningful one for you on that one. What about you, Derek? Is this your first one?
I think it's my first series win. I was in Series 10, didn't have any wins in that series, but I think I've had some wins in Arrive and Drive and other programs.
Mark, coming from Entry, I have to imagine this probably is your first. Am I correct?
First race, first win.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, that's setting expectations high. But, going back to Casey, how long have you been sim racing, actually? Are you a long-time practitioner, or is this something that you're just starting to get into in recent years?
I just put together my rig January of last year, got onboarded in February, started my first race like in March in Series 10. So, yeah, it's all pretty new to me.
Well, you've had a quick learning curve then. Derek, what about you?
Yeah, about 2.5 years for me. Bored with COVID and decided to get into sim racing at the advice of a neighbor, and here I am.
It's been a common story. What about you, Mark?
I've only been in sim racing about 6 months now. I originally started using it as a tool for training for a GT4 that I have that I track, and then started hearing about other opportunities, and it's been great.
We'll have to get you talking to Joey Atterbury. He also races GT4s. So also, what do you guys' families think about your sim racing? Are they embracing it with you? Or are they kind of curious and don't quite understand how this all works? Casey?
My wife actually enjoys it because I'm a year out, retired now. I've been retired for a year, so it gives her a little break from being around me all the time now.
What about you, Derek?
Yeah, I guess the funniest story I have is I sent my dad a video clip of a season 10 race, and I have a GT3 as well, and I was kind of banging doors in the race, and he was concerned that my car was damaged, asking me a lot of questions about the damage and the brakes and the tires, until I realized he thought it was a real race and not a sim race.
Yeah, that's a testament to the realism of the sim. Mark, what does your family think?
They're supportive. I have a daughter that's 22 that likes to jump in the rig, and she doesn't race. She'll do some AI stuff. The wife, the rest of the family, they close the door so they don't hear it.
I think, do we have time for one more? So it looks like we got a little bit more time. So I'm curious, how confident were you that you were going to do well at Spa? It's kind of a notorious track here, Casey.
Well, I know there's been some guys that have been really competitive with me between Series 10 and 11, so I wasn't confident at all. I just wanted to be consistent and avoid errors, and it paid off for me.
What about you, Derek?
Yeah, I echo what Casey says. I know there's a few guys that are quite competitive and chomping at the bit. They're on my heels for the whole race, and I'm sure we'll be seeing them again in the next race.
Mark, do you feel pretty confident coming into it? Is Spa something you're familiar with?
Yeah, I did some testing and some coaching. And as a matter of fact, I had an EDE that Casey and I were participating in, and he and I were both up front. And he's a tough racer, and it was very challenging. And that built my confidence as well, knowing I was racing someone that was highly qualified and good racer.
One last one for you guys. Represent your region. Where are you from? What club do you hail from?
I'm Casey, Zone 8 in Southern California, Riverside.
Derek?
Upper Canada region.
Oh, okay. What about you, Mark?
And I'm Maverick here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Well, guys, I can't thank you enough for coming in for our first ever Winner's Circle. Hope we'll get to talk to you guys more if you manage more victories. Like I said, good start to the season, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good night.
So that was Casey McDonald, Derek Dirksen, and Mark Foley, winners of the Challenge, Sport, and Entry classes, respectively there. Great stuff, and that is going to take us over to the starting grid for the race now as the drivers are lined up. And on the pole, it is Jonathan Fields with Klaus Nielsen starting in second. Terrence Tong will be P3, and David Fernandez will be fourth. Gary Reese will start P5, followed by Michael McKinney in sixth, and Mark Dorn in seventh. Brett Holmes starts P8 today. Ivan Gomez in P9. And then Mark Collingwood winds up in 10th at the start. Now we can finally bring in Robert Hill with the next 10.
Good evening. Rolling off 11th here tonight is Julian Velez alongside Kim Fricke there in the 12th position. Ben Leung in 13th. Matthew Jokiel 14th. Jason Brodigan rounds out the top 15 tonight. Adam Gerling in 16th. Avijit Barua there in 17th. David Glenn in 18th. Mark Rondo 19th. And rounding out the top 20 here tonight, Joe, is Peter Kummer.
Mario Gonzalez starts in 21st, followed by Robert Walton 22nd, and it's David Palmer P23 and Dean Chapman in 24th. Rick Reinsberg starts 25th today, followed by Volker Krebs in the 26th spot. Then it's Brandon Harrison 27th, David Snelling 28th, and Jeremy Mazzarello in at 29th. We might just have to cycle through the last of these because the pace car is peeling off and they are waiting for the call from the green flag, and there it is. Jonathan Fields gets a good start. It's a poor start for second place. Klaus Nielsen already getting swamped as look at this full field of cars heading down into La Source for the first time. 3 wide for second place. They're going to be able to make it through, Robert, but I can already see cars almost coming to a halt behind them as they slow up into the hairpin.
Yeah, a couple cars caught up in an incident towards the back there. You saw Terrence trying to get.
Yep, as they come up over Eau Rouge here, Jonathan Fields manages to hold on to the leads, but the battle for second has really backed them up. Look at how much gap they've lost to our leader, Terrence Tong, ahead of Nielsen here at the start, having gained one from the beginning. He's going to be able to hold him back down to the braking of Lecum, and then the rest of the field weaves their way back and forth through that opening chicane. Now they head back down the hill, Robert.
Yeah, taking a look here on the racetrack, looks like Klaus Nielsen closing in on Terrence Tong up in second and third. As we do watch a little bit further back, the field trying to cycle through. The battle for 19th does continue there, as you just saw on the screen. It is Coomer currently holding on to that position just ahead of Brandon Harrison, David Palmer, and Dean Chapman. Everyone cycling for position here in the early going, Joe, trying to find their spot, as we have a couple cars that just had heavy contact with the wall on the inside and the outside. Towards the back, looks like Mark Rondo and Mario Gonzalez involved in that one.
Oh, and I know Rondo had a bit of a problem heading down to the Rivage. Looks like his woes continue through Pujon, and they're going to fall to the back of the field. Unfortunately, saw another car spin. I think that was James Hayosh in the meantime. So, bit of an interesting start. Not used to seeing someone manage this big of a lead on the first lap. We're not even done with the first cycle around.
Yeah, Fields already out to a 1.8 second lead over Terrence Tong. Tong holding on to second, and he has a gap of about 0.4 of a second over Klaus Nielsen. These drivers already finding their spots up at the front of the field, but it does look like Tong able to take advantage of certain portions of the racetrack, close that gap a little bit, but now Fields already back on the loud pedal, about to spread that lead out to 2 seconds as we have another shuffle towards the midfield. Ivan Gomez, Matt Owens, and Brandon Harrison all getting mixed up.
Yeah, that started with Gomez going off the course at Blanchimont, and then Brandon Harrison unfortunately had a separate incident and ran into him because the car was not able to clear in the meantime. So we watched the lead on the bottom, but this is for 22nd down there. Duncan James being chased by Reinsberg. In fact, it's a whole train of cars being led by, it looks like, Volker Kreb in 20th.
Yeah, Krebs currently holding on to that 20th position behind, like you mentioned, Duncan James, Rick Reinsberg, and Avijay Barua. And for those wondering here tonight, track temperature currently 65 degrees out there. So on the cool side for these drivers, and they're managing it quite well thus far as Fields continues to spread that lead out here, Joe. 2.25 seconds already as we ride on board here with Klaus running in the 3rd position.
Yeah, he made a go at Terrence Tong that time by. You could see it at the top of the screen, but couldn't quite get the pass done. Slots back in behind him. Look at how close he is. He's making this a fight. I wonder if he's feeling some urgency because he sees Fields running away.
Yeah, I think these drivers definitely feeling, as you do see Terrence Tong there looking rather focused, staring in at the competition behind him, right in that mirror a little bit as he tries to focus ahead and catch that Fields machine. You definitely don't want to have Fields run away too much here in the early going. Of course, no full course yellows today, so these drivers will not have the opportunity to re-rack, restack, and go for it again should something happen. So as of right now, Tong trying to hold off the likes of Nielsen and Fernandez behind as he's charging forward towards Fields as we ride on board here with Michael McKinney currently running in the 5th spot.
Yeah, that's Fernandez just in front of him. The 09 holds that P4. He goes way off there on the outside of Blanchimont, but that will at least keep the car from spinning, which seems to be the main worry through there. But he still has problems because that racks up an incident point, and they'll get a penalty if they reach 17.
Definitely something to keep in mind here tonight. Very easy to step off the racetrack here at Spa. We saw it quite a bit in qualifying, which was a challenge in itself here tonight, Joe, for these drivers to get around this racetrack. The laps are quite long, 2 minutes and 19 seconds or so as these drivers navigate their way around the racetrack. Looks like we have a couple drivers hitting pit road, Kim Fricke and David Glenn back there 25th and 26th respectively as we watch the drivers work their way up Eau Rouge here. A very challenging set of corners in itself as we ride on board here with the 15th place car. That is Brodigan behind the wheel trying to charge his way towards the top 10.
Yeah, those 2 cars that you mentioned looks to have black flags, so that's why they visited pit lane in these early stages, unfortunately. Otherwise, usually they'd go much longer before they take a pit stop. There's certainly not much of a battle for the lead as it's described here on your screen. Much closer down here in 15th with Brodigan behind Pete Kummer in the number 35. David Glenn, you can see it, can do not much except just wait for the penalty to finish up.
Yeah, David Glenn, you just saw him on screen there. Quite the setup he's got going on. Looks like he's got a nice Star Wars theme going on in his racing room as he exits pit road here. A very tight pit road exit for these drivers. Immediately leads them out into the racing line off of turn number 1. So Glenn going to join back out there in the 44th position. He's going to have quite a bit of work to do recovering from that black flag here. Still a long way to go for these drivers, but any sort of setback here at Spa can definitely be magnified just by the distance they have to travel on this racetrack. Not the easiest to make up time on those cars ahead.
Meanwhile, we're going to jump back on to 20th place Reinsberg here. This is Duncan James just in front of him in the number 48, holding his own currently as they exit out of Stavelot 2 towards Blanchimont, one of the more critical corners. You can see just how long they are foot to the floor through here.
Yeah, you mentioned Duncan Janes. He is the biggest mover thus far here this evening, up 19 positions already, currently running in that 19th position. So he's done a lot of work to work his way up towards the front, taking advantage of some others' misfortune, but currently looking very good, trying to hold off Reinsberg, as you mentioned there, taking a look at him on the top camera, as you just see Fields pulling away down on the bottom of your screen, over 3.5 seconds over Tong, who's having a great race in his own, as we hop on board here with the 23rd place driver. That is Robert Lacroix, currently trying to hold off Matt Owens and Lee Binkley, and trying to chase down the driver. Jeremy Mazzarello currently finds himself in position number 22. Look how close he gets to that wall.
Yeah, has to try and widen the track as much as he can, up and over the crest in front of him. Looks like it's a pretty good run for Mazzariello on Barua. He could have a pass there. He's going to pop to the inside. You can see the orange 25 showing his nose. Mazzarella's got himself side by side down into the braking zone, and a nice textbook pass causes a checkup for Barua, who gets balked at the apex.
Yeah, great benefit of Spa is you do have a lot of passing opportunities. You can take advantage of those braking zones, dive in a little bit deeper, take advantage of the draft opportunities that you have on the straightaways, and make those passes like we just saw there. Very textbook move for Mazzariello to work his way up another position. As we continue to ride on board here with Robert Lacroix, you can see him trying to close in on the Barua machine, currently running in that 22nd spot. He's moved down 5 positions thus far here today. Not going in the right direction, but still a long way to go for him, as he's going to try to charge back, maybe get himself into that top 20 here, as we are approaching about 10 minutes into tonight's event.
Also, I can report that Dean Chapman fell afoul of the stewards and has been given a black flag penalty. I believe he's since gone into pit lane himself. Coming up through Blanchimont, a little farther up the order here. Things getting awful close in that battle between Terrence Tong and Michael McKinney, but he's going to be able to hold back that 527 for that podium position. In fact, top 3 are back where they begin this race. Fields, Nielsen, Tong, that's where they gridded.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Tong there in the 3rd spot, trying to hold off Michael McKinney and Brett Holmes. That's the 3rd, 4th, and 5th place cars now. As you just saw, McKinney close in rather quickly to the rear end of Terrence Tong. Brett Holmes all over the rear end of the McKinney machine as well. If they can get up to Terrence Tong once again, this could be one heck of a battle for that 3rd place position. David Fernandez not too far out of the picture as well, about a half second back of Brett Holmes. So these 4 drivers actually, within about a second and a half of each other. So some great racing here in the middle portion of this top 10.
And we saw an interesting thing there from Tong as we watched his webcam feed. He's running the butterfly style, the formula style wheel, kind of like what you see here. And going through La Source, he had to go completely crossed over for that one. That's got to be difficult on that style of wheel.
Yeah, watching these drivers, some of them absolutely turning that wheel completely upside down, definitely not the easiest thing to do. I know I've had a fair share of laps here at Spa myself, and I couldn't imagine having to do the wheel crossover each and every lap that you see these drivers having to do. And it's pretty phenomenal what these drivers have accomplished thus far, as this battle for 3rd absolutely continuing here. Tong, McKinney, Holmes, and Fernandez all within about a second and a half of each other, as more drivers entering the picture as well. This could turn into one great battle for 3rd as we hop on board here with the 9th place driver, Julian Velez. He's trying to chase down those cars ahead of him. He's actually essentially part of that line heading for that 3rd place position. So lots of great drivers within a short distance of each other.
It gets a very good run coming towards Blanchimont. That's Collingwood and Doran just in front of him in 7th and 8th place. Let's see if he can have an attack down into the bus stop chicane. He tries to stay as close as he can through Blanchimont, but it looks like he fell slightly off the back of him, and that's going to scupper his chances. In the meantime, battle for P2. They stay put as they were. McKinney up 2 spots. Brett Holmes up 3 positions. That's not easy to do at the sharp end of the field.
Absolutely not. The competition very strong up here at the top of the field. So like you mentioned, not the easiest to work your way forward, as well we see drivers barely giving each other any room whatsoever, as we're going to have a side-by-side battle there for that 9th position. Does look to be Velez and Collingwood, I do believe, side-by-side there.
It was indeed, but Collingwood managed to put himself away before Velez could pull the pass. And here we go. Doran is now the one under threat. He goes to the inside, covering the middle side of the track. Collingwood round the outside, down into the braking zone, much deeper, but he somehow makes the corner. That's going to net him 7th place.
Yeah, Doran opting to back out of it just a little bit there, letting Collingwood go on by. Probably the smarter move than going too wide into one of the tighter corners on the racing circuit. As we ride back on board here with Julian Velez, you can see him on the rear end of the Mark Doran machine. Mark Collingwood did just clear Doran, so now this is a 4-car battle for that 7th position. It's Collingwood, Doran, Velez, and Leung all together here on the racetrack. So we have multiple groups out here separated amongst the top 10, but nobody having absolutely anything here so far for Jonathan Fields, as he is ahead now by nearly 4 seconds on the field.
Yeah, he's been able to take advantage of that good start to great effects there. But we still continue to watch the drivers trying to chase him down there on the bottom. Tong chasing Nielsen, but starting to lose a little bit of touch. I mentioned maybe Klaus was afraid that he was losing contact with Fields, and I think that has come to fruition, even though he's gotten himself some clear air. I think the gap is continuing to stretch out as we also watch that battle for what is now 8th, since Collingwood seems to be stretching himself away, and Ben Leung is replacing him at the tail of that train, making things a little bit nervous for Velez.
Like you mentioned, it's essentially working like slot cars here. Everyone taking their position in the pack, slotting ahead of each other, swapping. Oh, that was a huge hit at the top of the straight, and that is Coomer involved in that one, back in the 24th position now. That was a heavy impact on board that machine.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's very similar to what we mentioned on the first lap. Barua lost control at the same spot as his car was still trying to recover, and that's why the two of them have come together. And I think another car now just had an incident down through Blanchimont. That is a corner that has seen many incidents over this event because the sport and challenge classes also had, I want to say, about half a dozen cars wreck in that one corner.
Yeah, this track definitely not overly forgiving, Joe. Lots of opportunity to make those passes, but lots of opportunity for things to go wrong as well. You get into some of these corners thinking that you can carry more momentum through than you actually can, and on exit, it just seems to slap you right in the face as you see drivers go too deep into the corner, end up in the wall, end up getting collected in incidents, and just end up back in the garage area. As we ride on board here with Brett Holmes, you mentioned earlier, up 3 positions on the day. He is all over the rear end of the Michael McKinney machine, so Holmes looking to work his way forward up into that 4th position. We'll see if he can do it here in the closing couple of moments on this particular lap, but Brett Holmes, great run here early on.
Down through Stavelo as he follows in the tire tracks of Michael McKinney. He gets a decent exit. He's going to feel the pull here with the slipstream. You can see behind him. Also, Fernandez is going to get a tow, a double tow, if you will, from these two cars in front of him. Up towards Blanchimont. You can see how fearsome this is from on board, how fast they have to take it. And both the cars look mighty unsteady, but they keep it out of the wall as opposed to their rivals down into the braking zone. It gets tight, but still no change for position.
Yeah, still no change for position there as you see the group of cars all together here. That is from McKinney on back. These drivers trying to find their spot up here in the top 5 and trying to get through without hitting each other and taking each other out, because they're all having very strong runs. Of course, opening round of the season here today. So if you can take advantage of a good points day, you could set yourself up rather well for the rest of the season. But one thing to keep an eye on, all these drivers that have had issues and had to go pit side. Eventually, they're going to exit those pits and could come into play when our leader Fields has to go on by and navigate through those slower cars. So opportunity still potentially available for the drivers from Nielsen on back to potentially have a run, as Brett Holmes going to take a look to the inside, not able to get there this time, as he's going to hold steady there in position number 5.
Oh, it was a big look, but just not effective enough. Volker Krebs, Michael Adams both had separate spins again out at Blanchimont. Now, the interesting thing about this one, Robert, is the previous 2 classes were fixed setups. This one's open setup, and yet we're still seeing issues. Drivers just seem to have a rough time in the Porsches at Blanchimont.
Yeah, the driver's definitely not finding that proper handling that they would have liked coming through Blanchimont here tonight. You could see some adjustments happen when they do come pit side to grab a fresh set of tires on these machines. So it could improve as the race goes on. We are approaching the halfway point here, about 18 minutes in, 22 to go. That may be adjusted as we go along, but these drivers definitely looking to find that proper balance that they haven't had in the first half.
Yeah, I haven't seen any scheduled pit stops yet up and down the timing tower. So anybody who has been in, it's either been for penalties or for repairs on the car. Now, they also have a spare car if they get too much damage to carry on, so they can get back out there, but they'll suffer the lost time of coming into the pits, especially if they have to pit an extra time and are outside the pit window. We're going to watch the battle for 4th here on the bottom, while on the top, you can see the battle for 2nd between Nielsen and Tong as well. Well, it might be the battle for 3rd as McKinney, who was very slow off the corner. No, excuse me, it's Tong getting away in 3rd. This is a battle for 4th as McKinney has Brett Holmes breathing down his neck. Meanwhile, we've got 10th place here with Ben Leung chasing on Mark Doran. So just inside those top 10 here at this stage. A very poor exit by Mark in the 486, but it's difficult to go side by side through Eau Rouge. Ben Leung knows that. Looks like he backed out of it.
Yeah, Mark Doran, one of only a few drivers in this top 20 that has lost position so far here tonight. As of this point, most drivers have worked their way forward, gained a couple spots on the racetrack here tonight. So he's going to be looking to gain some spots here in the second half as we hop on board here with David Fernandez. You can see Brett Holmes right ahead of him. Holmes has been a very strong driver in the early parts of today's race. I definitely think he has a car that can compete with Terrence Tong, potentially Klaus Nielsen as well, who's currently running up in that 2nd position, but he's going to have to make work of Michael McKinney here in the next couple of laps if he does want to have a shot at those drivers ahead of him here as we ride on board with Michael McKinney. And once again, you can just see the wheel input there is, you can see a shout out to Race Control. DJ up on the banner here of the Michael McKinney machines. Shout out to DJ Lyon, one of our producers with Podium Esports as well.
Yep, and kind of a thankless job, honestly, having to work that. So glad to see some appreciation from the drivers rather than grumbling for once. He's doing all he can to keep up with Terrence Tong, but that pink machine just is always slightly out of reach.
Yeah, it just seems like Terrence Tong has that little bit extra to be able to pull away from these drivers, but nobody can catch the likes of Nielsen or Fields so far. It's kind of like we have Fields, then a bubble, we got Nielsen, then a bubble, and then we have that pack of cars behind Terrence Tong here. As we have a cool double shot here. That's Terrence Tong on the left side, Michael McKinney on the right side as they duke it out here on the racetrack. We'll see who can win out in this battle.
This is the closest we've seen it for some time. McKinney around the outside, cuts back. Can he get the over-under on him? Doesn't look like it. Tong will hold on to 3rd, at least for the time being. This battle for the final step of the podium has definitely been one of the most hotly contested in this race. And you mentioned it earlier, we're now past the halfway point. At what stage do one of these drivers decide to duck off to see if they can maybe get track position through the pit stops?
With how tight it's been here, 3rd through 5th, I would expect varying pit strategies for these drivers, not necessarily coming down at the same time. We're going to have to watch for the over and under cuts as we go side by side. That's McKinney on the left side, Tong out there on the right. Tong's going to win out on this one once again, but McKinney going to look for that crossover. Not quite able to get there this time as he's going to get back in line and look for that second opportunity, but that's opened the door here for Brett Holmes to take a look.
Oh, side by side, almost Noah's Ark there. Gets his nose down there. Brett Holmes down through no-name corner. Has to back out, and somehow McKinney holds on to that P4. I kind of wondered if that was going to be the case. As soon as someone made a move, it was a chain reaction down the order.
That's exactly it. As soon as you start making that first move, it does open the door for drivers to follow, and it's kind of an invitation for other drivers to make that move as well. As we ride on board here with Michael McKinney, he's going to try to set himself up once again for another battle. But I do want to point out how impressed I was. Terrence Tong was in 2 side-by-side battles there, and the emotion on his face never changed. He was concrete and focused.
It's a sign of a good driver. He's keeping himself under control even in the heat of the moment. But unfortunately, the pressure's not gone away quite yet. Still has 3 cars. Look at this. The view forward from McKinney. The view backwards from Tong. And he's closing in down to the bus stop chicane, but he's not close enough.
Yeah, cue the Jaws music there as McKinney trying to close in on the back of Tong as he took a look to try to get to the left side of Terrence Tong there. You may see another dive from Michael McKinney as we head down towards turn number 1. This is an opportunity where you won't necessarily usually go for a pass unless you want to play that risky game, but McKinney opting to stay in line here behind Terrence Tong as we're going to work our way past pit road and head up towards Eau Rouge. We'll see if McKinney can close the gap once again.
He's going to need to. I think we've had some more incidents at Blanchimont. Mazzariello and Duncan James seem to be slow on my timing tower, so I suspect they've become the latest to spin through that turn. Meanwhile, through the compression of Eau Rouge, over Radion, and down the long straight they go. This really shows you the change of direction. Remember, these are GT cars that are managing to do that these days. The advancements in technology and racing really has done incredible things with the speed of all racing cars. As we come back to that battle now between Tong, McKinney, Holmes, and Fernandez.
Yeah, we have a great field here today, about 46 cars, but this has been the absolute best battle that we've had all night long. Terrence Tong doing a nice job holding off Michael McKinney as he's trying to set himself up for another opportunity to make a dive. As we ride on the rear end here of the Terrence Tong machine, you can see Michael McKinney trying to set himself up to make that pass once again. He's also got to hold off a hungry Brett Holmes, who has made a couple dives himself here tonight. So this could get very interesting once again if Michael McKinney is able to get his nose to the left or right side of the Terrence Tong machine. I think that may be an invitation for Brett Holmes to do much of the same.
Now, our observant viewers may have noticed that the headlights have come on the cars a little bit earlier than in the previous races. We had a small delay on the grid, so the cars have taken off a little bit later than usual, which means they're going to be going farther into the dark than the other series here today. It's not going to be that much farther, but I mean, although night racing is very common here at Spa, I have to imagine it's still going to up the difficulty.
Difficulty definitely going to get up here as these drivers continue to duke it out, continue to battle for each and every position. And Joe, it does look like we're going to be able to race the full distance here. I know that was in question due to some delays with the green flag here today. So another 14 minutes or so for these drivers to battle it out for position. As we watch the battle for position number 13, that's Palmer and Walton. As Palmer going to take it pit side, looks like that's going to be his scheduled pit stop of the day.
And he's not the first. Michael McKinney, Brett Holmes both pitted in. Doran also pitted. Gary Reese has pitted. David Palmer. It's all starting to kick off. I think we're starting to hit the end of the pit window.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it, as we do see these drivers duking it out for position. And as we just heard, race control has advised the drivers that we're going to be going the distance here today, like I said, and they all made the decision to head pit side, or most of them anyways, to head pit side, grab their fuel, and get back out here to battle for each and every position.
And those that have finished it up are heading back out. Hopefully they'll be able to get into clear air. That's the downside to pitting before your rivals, is you got to make sure you find that gap in the traffic. And you can see just how busy pit lane is getting.
Yeah, pit lane definitely heavily occupied right now. Everyone opting to come down, grab their fuel, make their one pit stop of the race. And you mentioned the drivers coming back out onto the track, trying to find their hole on the racetrack. We see Fields here. He is the leader. He has some lap traffic ahead of him, so he's going to have a challenge of his own, but I do believe he should be coming down pit road momentarily. But these other drivers not necessarily coming out with those drivers they were battling earlier on. So that's a challenge in itself, trying to learn the driving style and tendencies of those other drivers around you here at Spa, which of course is a challenge for each and every driver on its own.
About 15 that still need to come in for their pit stop that have made it one lap longer than the rest of the field, but about half of them obviously came in last lap and decided to take their service. And there we go, another one heading on in. That is Jonathan Fields, our leader. Klaus Nielsen's going to follow him, and Terrence Tong will as well. But yep, this is the very end of it, so we should be seeing every single car left out on the track, pitting in, taking fuel, getting back out. McKinney, our highest driver to have pitted, currently sits in 12th, and he's coming up to Blanchimont now.
Yeah, McKinney and Holmes should slot out here to first and second on the racetrack as the pit cycle does conclude. As you mentioned here, riding on board with car number 18, that's Gary Reese. He's currently running back in 21st. You can expect that position to take a big jump as they cycle past some drivers finalizing their pit stop here today. As you do see Tong leaving pit road now. Fields has already exited. Tong currently holding on to that third spot.
Oh, sorry. Sorry to jump in there. I thought Nielsen had jumped Tong, but he was ahead of him before that. McKinney, unfortunately, not able to inherit the lead. Fields is going to beat him out. He'll return in 5th place. I think the one change we did have in that is Fernandez jumped McKinney.
Yeah, that is definitely the one change. Fernandez waited one lap longer than McKinney and Holmes and has gotten himself about a second and a half ahead of Michael McKinney. So David Fernandez taking advantage of his pit strategy here tonight as we ride on board with the 43rd place car. That's Brandon Harrison. He is having himself a rocky evening, hoping to gain a couple spots here in the closing stages, but pit cycle definitely paying off for Fernandez here tonight as he finds himself in position number 4.
I want to give Brandon some credit, though, as, boy, you can see his arms flailing there as he tried to catch that slide.
He's working.
Yeah, he is. But I was going to say, I want to give him credit because whenever a driver finds themselves way down the order and they don't have many drivers to battle with, seeing them carry on makes me smile. That tells me they're a true racer at heart. They're not going to give up. They're going to finish this one.
That's exactly it. He might not be having the race that he wants here tonight, but Brandon Harrison taking advantage of each and every lap that he has out here on the racetrack. Every lap on a track is a good opportunity to learn. That's something I've always stuck with. And you see David Glenn here not having the best of nights either. He was up in that top 20 earlier tonight, now finds himself back in 41st position as Ryan Bauer comes over our ears here and mentions the force is not with him tonight, and that is absolutely correct. Unfortunate for David Glenn as he finds himself back outside the top 40.
Yeah, unfortunate to see, and I think Glenn, did he join the dark side? No, I don't think he did get the black flag on this one, so it was just an incident that set him back down the order, and he's out on the track after taking his spare car, unfortunately. Battle for 14th, Rick Reinsberg. He is sandwiched between David Palmer and Ivan Gomez. They're coming up to the braking for the bus stop chicane, but don't think anybody's going to change positions this time. But Ivan Gomez jumps into the pits, and is he taking a second stop? I think he is.
Yeah, Ivan Gomez and Mark Rondo both going pit side for a second time here tonight. They're going to pit just behind that 14th place battle. So kind of surprising, but I do wonder if potentially they came down earlier on just taking that secondary car, because I know Rondo was involved in another incident there. As we take a look at Michael McKinney, currently running 5th, trying to hold off Brett Holmes once again. As Holmes taking another look to the right side of McKinney, they're going to go side by side back to single file here. Brett Holmes just cannot make that pass on McKinney.
Would have been ambitious to try and make that pass through Malmedy and had to back out of it as McKinney's going to cover him off. Brett Holmes laying the pressure on with 8 minutes left to go. We're into the final few laps of this race as they plunge down the hill. I've been seeing a lot of drivers using up some of those incident points going beyond the white lines. Remember, a lot of those spots, it is 4 wheels over the white line, much like you see in Formula One, which will net you an incident point. And if you get 17 of those, you'll be given a drive-through penalty. Here we go. I love this dual angle when we get this, the front and back of each battling car.
Yeah, we have the front and rear end of the Michael McKinney machine. As you can see, just behind him, Brett Holmes took a lunge, but he's also trying to catch that David Fernandez machine. That's the 09 car. Currently finds himself up in position number 4. So these drivers all under a blanket trying to grab each and every position that they possibly can, as Brett Holmes once again trying to close that gap on McKinney. We'll see if he's able to make the pass before the end of this one, coming up on just 7 minutes to go. So that's it's about 4 laps for these drivers.
Yeah, so they're going to go fast, though, here as they continue to whip across the start-finish line and set another one on the board. The battle between McKinney and Holmes rages on as we check in back at 13th. David Palmer trying to defend from Rick Reinsberg. We were watching that a little bit earlier, and they have not been able to get away from one another. Differing lines as they drift across the track down towards La Source, sharpest and slowest corner on this circuit, as they try and get it woed up, and then it heads down the hill.
Yeah, as the drivers head down the hill, you can see that battle continue there for 13th as Fernandez on the bottom, getting himself a run, trying to close on that Terrence Tong, which actually that is McKinney just behind him here as these guys continue to duke it out for position. Fernandez holding on to 4th. Just behind him is McKinney. Holmes behind him as well, as they continue to battle 4th through 6th. That battle has not gone away whatsoever here tonight, as they're going to have one sideways just ahead of them here. That could have got sketchy.
And that's going to allow a side-by-side moment. McKinney on the attack on Fernandez, but backs out of it, doesn't keep the momentum up, plunging down towards Puhan. And as they come down through, it is Holmes chasing McKinney, chasing Fernandez for 4th position, just outside of the podium. They have definitely lost touch with Tong at this stage.
Yeah, the only way at this point I do believe that they'll be able to get back up to that podium is if Terrence Tong makes a mistake. He's definitely not totally out of reach for them, just starting to pull away a little bit more here. And as this battle does continue 4th through 6th, Fernandez, McKinney, and Holmes, they're going to continue to lose that positioning on the racetrack, fall further back from Terrence Tong as they start to hold each other up a little bit. But we'll see the next time the McKinney opts to make another move on Fernandez, see if he can complete the pass. And again, that guy, Brett Holmes goes around into the wall. Hard hit for Brett Holmes.
The latest to fall to Blanchimont, and he finds an opening to get the car going. Is he going to try and limp it home from here, or does he have to come into the pits to be able to carry on? Looks like he's going to try and carry on. So the 15 falls to P9, but surely he doesn't have speed after a hit that big.
Heavy impact for Brett Holmes. Was running incredibly strong, trying to catch up to the McKinney machine. As we take a look on the podium replay machine, that's Brett Holmes. We'll see what happened to him. I think he just overstepped. Yes, he does. It ends up hard into that wall. That was a big one for Brett Holmes.
Yeah, the car with the loop on its side does a loop and gets back around. but he's not going to have the result he was looking for. Interesting note on that, my brother was actually one of the engineers that helped design the double loop that they did at the X Games for Hot Wheels some years ago. So always a passion for that brand. He's got more problems down the Kemmel Straight, not a place you typically see an accident, and that is Mark Doran, who is slow with him. I don't know if there was a miscommunication or if the car broke on him or what.
Wow, we just saw Brett Holmes do another loop. So we got the double loop there, Joe. What? Oh, wow.
Miscommunication in a big way.
Yeah, very big misjudgment there. The two drivers coming together at the tail of the top 10. Watching again from overhead, you see Brett Holmes. He tries to move off to the right side and clips, I believe that was the Mark Doran machine, sends Doran around into the wall. Both drivers sustaining additional damage. That's definitely not what they were looking for at this point in time, as it looks like Holmes going to fall back to 10th, and Doran now falling towards the tail of the top 15. So Doran heavy damage on that machine. As we ride on board here with Jonathan Fields, he's led, I think, pretty much every lap of the day.
He has indeed. He stopped late, so he kept the lead all the way through those pit stops. 2.5 minutes left to go, which means we have 2 laps to go here for the 070. Klaus Nielsen managed to keep him honest at the least, about 5 seconds apart. Oh my goodness, poor Brett Holmes is a sitting duck now. He's overtaken by Yokel, and he was almost overtaken by Palmer. Is he going to be able to survive the corner this time? He goes wide to use up that extra paved runoff, but as they come to the braking, they're side by side. He can't get it stopped in time, runs into the side of Palmer, and into the pit lane goes Holmes.
Brett Holmes going to opt to head down and take his spare car on that 15 machine. You could tell the handling just went completely out the window there, as he nearly put himself in that other car's window as he went heavy into the braking zone there. We watched the battle for 13th. It's Reese currently holding onto the spot. Walton just behind Wances. Now we ride on board here with Scott Bowers, currently in position number 25. He's trying to chase down Lee Binkley in 24th, and Ivan Gomez there in position number 23. And just an update on Brett Holmes, he has fallen all the way back to 18th as he rejoins the field towards the tail end of that top 20.
Yeah, apologies to the mid to the back of the field, because there have been some great battles in here. It's just there's been so many fights in the top 10. We can't get far back enough to show enough here in time. This finally gives us a chance to breathe, and Bowers is going to hold his breath until he can go by Binkley, but he's not near enough even with the slipstream down the Kemmel Straight. And another example of a good battle that we've got. This is for 35th position between Sherburne and Chapman.
Yeah, top of your screen, the battle for 25th. Bottom of the screen is the battle for 35th. So these drivers, despite not being up there in that top 10, they're battling for each and every position. It's a sense of pride at this point. These guys just want to say that they beat everybody else at the tail of the field. And like I mentioned earlier, every lap on the racetrack is a lap of opportunity and lessons learned for these guys. So if it's a battle for 35th, that could turn into a lesson used when they come into a battle for 10th. A week from now. So watching these guys duke it out, the battle for 10th at the top of your screen now. That's Yokel trying to hold off Palmer, Reinsberg, and Reese as we're coming around to the end of the time on the board, which means a white flag should be displayed.
Absolutely is. He's got one more to go. Looks like we've lost Holmes. He has towed the car. He's not going to be able to finish this race after he had another incident. I think I may have figured out the mystery on why he pitted so suddenly. I wonder if he went over the incident limit with that last off track that he had. So we're hearing that from race control he has 18 incidents. So yeah, I think that probably solves the mystery right there.
Yeah, mystery no more. Brett Holmes has gone over the incident limit, which is what has unfortunately ended his day prematurely here, including all that damage received in those earlier incidents. Mark Doran taking back to pit road, but watching Jonathan Fields here. He has absolutely dominated today. Led from the drop of the green flag, led through the pit cycle, and he is well on his way to collecting the victory here tonight at Spa. Great drive by Jonathan Fields here with just a handful of corners to go.
It has been just an impressive showing by the 070, as we're going to watch the battle for 10th in the meantime. Actually, I think, yeah, it is for 10th. That's Hank McCarthy in front of him. I didn't realize that was a lapped car. Palmer chasing on Yokel, and Rick Reinsberg in the heat of that as well. Gary Reese could maybe pick a spot or two if they start fighting too much there. And the lap car tries to pull out of the way, almost causes a big accident down out of Rivage. Thankfully, everybody was heads up enough, but another example of just hold your racing line. Try not to do the right thing, because it's better to be predictable. In the meantime, on the top of your screen, it is going to be Strawberry Fields forever for Jonathan in that 070, because he is going to open up tonight with a win down into the final corner. It's not the most massive win we have seen, but it is a cool, calm, and collected win for Jonathan as he claims victory at Spa.
Yeah, checkered flag display. Jonathan Fields going to celebrate as he crosses the line here, Joe. Great drive, like you mentioned here tonight. What a race by Jonathan Fields as we hop back on board with Michael McKinney. He's going to come around to collect that 5th place finish for him tonight. Great drive by McKinney as well.
Nielsen second, Tong getting himself a 3rd place as the rest of them now start streaming across the line. That gives you a sense of how packed it was for the rest of the pack compared to the top of the field. In fact, speaking of, as they cross here in that group that we were watching before, Yokel's going to beat Palmer, Reinsberg, and Reese in the end. I got a few more on the lead lap. In fact, an impressive amount of cars on the lead lap, even though I know this is a long lap here. We saw so many issues out there. I thought that we'd have a lot more lapped cars. And down into the braking of the bus stop, side-by-side action that is unfortunately going to spin around Lee Binkley, and he loses one more position before the checkers.
Intense racing all throughout the field here as we continue to watch this battle for position number 25. It's Montgomery currently holding on to the spot. Douglas just behind him as they come to the line. This time it's going to be Montgomery holding off on position number 25 here tonight as we head back to the battle for 32nd. It's Sherburne going to come across the line ahead of Chapman and Krebs. So great battles all throughout the field, as I do believe most of the field has now crossed that start-finish line.
Indeed. So it looks like the number 35 is going to be our last car to be able to finish this one on the lead lap. That'll be 36 of them. And honestly, most of the cars that did not finish on the lead lap were DNF'd anyways, which is just a little bit unusual for this one. But that's going to take us to the results, of course, as we see Jonathan Fields topping the timing tower at the end of the race. Klaus Nielsen followed him home about 7 seconds back. He's going to have to up his game next round if he wants to try and pick up a W. Terrence Tong will finish on the last step of the podium with David Fernandez in 4th. Hard-fought battle for him, followed by Michael McKinney there in P5, Julian Velez in 6th, and Mark Collingwood in 7th. Ben Leung was P8 today as Adam Gerling finished 9th, and Matthew Yokel rounds out your top 10.
Coming home 11th tonight, David Palmer just ahead of Rick Reinsberg there in position number 12. Gary Reese comes home 13 with Robert Lacroix in 14th. Robert Walton 15th, so Lacroix winning the Battle of the Roberts here today. Matt Owens in 16th. Richard Franco in 17th. J.R. Gregory comes home 18th with Jonathan Reber in 19th. And Ivan Gomez round out the top 20.
Kenny Brown, how about this? 35th to 21st. Scott Bowers did him many better. 46th to 22nd for the 917 car. Amazing. David Snelling was 23rd, and then John Montgomery, P24. After that, Kevin Douglas was in the quarter century mark. Mario Gonzalez, P26. Jason Brodigan was 27th. Patrick Adamczyk managed 28th, gaining 8 positions, as Kim Fricke was 29th, and Christopher Sherburne finished 30th.
Dean Chapman comes home 31st here this evening, with 32nd being Volker Krebs. David Glenn there in 33rd, with Peter Kummer there in 34th. Duncan James brings it home 35th here this afternoon. Lee Binkley in 36th. Mark Doran 37th. He was up in that top 10 earlier on tonight. Trouble hit him in the early portions. Jeremy Mazzarello in 38th. Hank McCarthy 39th. And Brett Holmes, we saw him battling it out in the top 5 for most of this race, comes home in position number 40.
41st went to Pete Roth, and he did actually finish the race, but the rest of these drivers did not. Michael Adams, 42nd. Mark Rondeau, 43rd. Avijit Barua, 44th. Brandon Harrison, 45th. And James Hayosh, 46th. Boyer and Andrade did not starts for the race today. Wow, it took a little extra time to get going, but once it did, it was full of excitement. Robert, this one really shows the upped intensity now that we've gone from the sport and challenge up to club. I can only imagine what pro's going to be like tomorrow.
The intensity absolutely showed here today. Fields was able to run away with it by about 6 seconds, but from Klaus Nielsen all the way back, mostly through that top 10, all the drivers were under a blanket at one point or another, duking it out, beating and banging doors at multiple points as well, making late lunges into those corners. So great battles all throughout the top 10 and all throughout the field. We saw all the way back to even 35th position at one point, had 3 or 4 cars under a blanket battling for those spots. So great drive here tonight by all drivers at Spa. 36 of 46 to start, finishing on the lead lap. That's pretty darn impressive, Joe.
Absolutely. So a big thank you both to our viewers for sticking with us after the slight delay, and also to Race Control for having to sort out what was a headache of a mess, I'm sure. Now, if you thought this one was entertaining, make sure to join us tomorrow night, January 11th, for the Pro Class here at Spa-Francorchamps. Also, thanks to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, as well as a huge thanks to our team tonight, Rob, Ryan, Cameron, and Dougie. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak, and I'll see you on the track.